February 21st of February 2024. I'm going to be your host tonight, Dana Durnford. I'm on, you can call in at 709-589-4406. Hope everybody had a great day. Consider clicking, subscribing, all that other fun stuff. And we got a big shoe for everybody tonight. We're back to the Freedom of Information files. We got some serious crazy stuff. Some days are like diamonds, and some days are just gold, but they're always incredible stuff. So the official story as of July the 13th, 2023, was there's no meltdowns, there's no releases. This is from the International Atomic Energy Agencies, the nuclear regulatory agencies, the universities, the medias. But if we take a walk back in time, this is the the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission's statistics on releases. So you got noble gases, about 13.5 million curies. Iodine is 13.5 million. I guess that's what they're talking about. Cesium 134 at 270,000 curies. 137 at 270,270 curies. So quite the coincidence, about the exact same. And they're not created in the same ratio. Radioactive material released into the air in April and later in 2011 were less than 1% of that in March. Well, March, you had all the reactors and fuel pools blew up. Right? And so it's how are you going to keep that number going? But the 1% of what was released in March is an absurd amount. Radioactive material released into the ocean, now they're claiming 270,270 curies again of iodine this time. And cesium 134 at 94,000 curies. Let's do the math on some of that. And I apologize for not having the math up earlier. We got a poll, by the way. The reason that poll is like it is tonight is because we're covering an awful lot of United States Nuclear Regulatory Commissions. So does the United States Regulatory Commission, Fukushima's nuclear meltdowns cover-up, qualify as an evil betrayal and crimes against humanity? And it's impossible not to agree with what I'm going to show you tonight. It's impossible. So let's talk about the numbers. So you got, I'll put my big shiny head in there somewhere. So you got 13,513,000 curies. So 13,533 million, right? Curies. And let's look at cesium 137 curies. We'll use that as a baseline. Now, the biggest byproduct of radiated fuel rod is the curium isotopes, not cesium, by the way. So I'm just going to show you how the baseline works. Then we're going to do the equation. And I want you to see the incredible discrepancy of what we're talking about. So a curie, by the way, is 37 million atoms. And the atoms are disintegrating every second. So it's 37 million disintegrations a second. That's a curie, but in a gram, cesium-137 is at 88 curies. So it's 88 times 37 billion disintegrations. anthropogenic man-made. So potassium, like bananas, is 71 10 millionths of a curie per gram. So 71 10 millionths, so 0.000071 times 37 billion. Whereas cesium is 88 curies times 37 billion. Okay. So we're going to take 88 and end up with a gram. So here's our number, 13.5 million curies. We're going to divide that by 88. And then that number is grams. So I'm going to divide that by 29 grams to get an ounce. Is 5,000 ounces. We're going to divide that by 16 ounces to get pounds. So they're saying 331 pounds. The top of each building was millions and millions and millions and millions of pounds. So using that as a standard, oh, you're not seeing double. So you got 331 pounds of iodine. You got even less of cesium-137. And so in reactor 4, there was 21,000 pounds of plutonium in the fuel pools. That was all lost. So the numbers you're seeing seems like a high number, and trust me, that's a very high number. That's a catastrophic number, but it's completely got nothing to do with the actual numbers. And what I mean by that is you can see the plumes of plutonium-239 dispersal, but they're not based upon the actual inventories that were lost. They're based upon some fantasy number the nuclear industry cooked up, like the NRC had just done to you. So this is the stump that goes to reactor 4, and that's that goes to reactor 3. But there's 8 fuel pools at the top of each building, and the same thing for reactor 1 and 2. So it's equal to about 4,000 Chernobyls. Now remember, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. Okay, so here we go. We got some prep work to do. International. So this was last year, 2023. July the 10th. This is when they changed the numbers. Was July the 13th, I think, is the first report we got, and was from a South Korean professor of nuclear and quantum engineering. And he said it was equal to 3 grams of sugar. Who's yelling at me now? Well, I can't. And you're probably going to hear that because the phone is connected. So if anybody calls in, you're going to show up immediately in the audio. Which is a problem, isn't it? I should disconnect that because I can't hear the ringing. That could be a problem, so bear with me. There's going to be a bit of feedback. I got to disconnect that in case it rings, because otherwise I'm not going to hear it, right? I didn't hear it that time. I felt a little buzzing in the desktop and happened to look down. Okay, so July, this is important. Now, just so you can appreciate what we're talking about here, is the International Atomic Energy Agency is not a regulatory agency. They're going to explain it in their own words to you. And I also got some from their website to help articulate it too. International Atomic Energy Agency's chief, Ralphio Grossi, visited to South Korea, fails to quell concerns about Fukushima wastewater dumping because it's a false story. It's been hemorrhaging, flowing since day 2, right, into the ocean, into the atmosphere, because they're complete meltdowns. These are not contained buildings. The official story as of July the 13th is they didn't melt down. They moved the goalposts, right? I'd like to emphasize, this is Raphael Grossi's word, the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency / United Nations / Military Industrial Complex. I would like to emphasize that the release of the treated water stored at Fukushima Daiichi power station is a national decision by the government of Japan. So it's a decision by the government of Japan, not of the International Atomic Energy Agency, for anybody that don't understand it. And that the report that they gave, and remember that folder where they said they okayed the water release. Well, that's not what they were actually doing, but that's what the media told you. Because they're absolving themselves by saying the release of the treated water stored at Fukushima Station is a national decision from the government of Japan, not the International Atomic Energy Agency, and that the International Atomic Energy Agency's report is neither a recommendation nor an endorsement of that policy. So, like, it's a complete disconnect, right? So truth check, not fact check. The author is professor of nuclear engineering in South Korea. South Korea, I believe. A movement by the nuclear mythbusters, which is Taiwan. My apologies. Nuclear mythbusters, Dr. Hang himself. A community of pro-nuclear scientists, pro-nuclear, scientists and students helped sway the public over nuclear power in Taiwan after Fukushima. Helped sway the public. A community of pro-nuclear scientists and students, thousands, with an S, of online members of the group with science and engineering backgrounds tried to break the myth about nuclear energy. In other words, what they've done, Taiwan universities and alumni and students and everybody else done for several years, there's several thousand of them. The number I heard back in the original report was 2,100 students, I believe it was. And so they weren't counting the scientists and the alumni and everybody else. What they done was they spammed the internet every day, 7 days a week for several years, saying it was like a banana and a potato chip and walking in the sunshine. The most despicable thing imaginable, where your universities turn on you to mock you and to ridicule you if you had any concerns. Like, these universities should have been burnt to the ground for what they've done. Okay, so here's another story from last year. The International Atomic Energy Agency says the public trust key to projects using radioactive soil from Fukushima. Public trust. Because they're growing food into 1-ton bags of radiation. They're dumping it out and growing food. Because they don't want to store it for 1 million years. It's insane. You picked up 30 million 1-ton bags because it's lethal radiation. And now you're dumping it out and growing food in it because nobody's paying attention anymore. Here's the International Atomic Energy, Raphael Grossi again. The International Atomic Energy Agency is not a regulator, and therefore they're not in a position to judge or approve Japan's soil recycling project. You can't recycle nuclear waste and dirty bombs, so how can you recycle dirty bombs? This is about a kilogram. These are dirty bombs. And these are 100% unassailably dirty bombs. So we done this like a week ago or 2 weeks ago. We went over to the International Atomic Energy Agency site / United Nations. Fukushima, and they have a special dedicated page to Fukushima ALPS, treated water discharges. Now, I covered that pretty heavily last night, right? The tanks and the discharged water. The tanks were built to manipulate you, so you didn't look for... My apologies. Because, like, if you just... Like, they don't show you pictures anymore, right? But I put these two pictures together. That's reactor 4 and that's reactor 3. So when they tell you nothing got out and show you those pictures, the story doesn't work, right? So without the pictures, Without the pictures like this, then it kind of works, eh? But if they put that picture up on their website and tells you nothing got out, you're going to give them an appropriate response. You're going to go scumbag, right? Or something even more appropriate, I'm sure. The results and the conclusions International Atomic Energy Agency's review are not legally binding. In other words, they don't have any sovereignty over any country. They can't compel anybody, any companies or organizations or countries to follow they're not regulatory agencies. So generally, the International Atomic Energy Agency safety standards are not legally binding for member states. However, the government of Japan remains fully responsible for the safety of handling the Alps treated water. So that's 3 different stories, 2 from major media, 1 from the International Atomic Energy Agency's website we got last week, where they clearly absolved themselves of any responsibility. And if that's not a scumbag, what actually is? So this was a study that came out in 2018. Nationwide increase in children and being born missing a testicle, basically. A nationwide increase. Absent of one or both testicles from the scrotum. So if this has happened to the children, which obviously is, they got to study about it, then what's happening to the birds and mammals and animals and insects? Because they're much more vulnerable, much more susceptible too than the radiation. Okay, so we got 3 of these stories I want to cover. And I'm going to show you, first let me show you the pictures. These are important, and we're only going to talk about we're going to talk about the other reactors, but we're going to talk about a lot about reactor 3 and reactor 4. So look at these buildings, and there's nothing functional left, right? If that was your hotel, because these are 190-foot buildings. These are bigger than most hotels. And it's certainly a lot of skyscrapers. Okay, so they're going to claim on the 22nd, March the 22nd, which is 11 days after the tsunami, that they're reconnecting power to all. They have successfully reconnected all 6 reactors to the power supply at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. But look at the nuclear power plant and tell me if you think that's connected to the grid, right? Here's another story, 22nd and 3rd. Cooling Fukushima possible after connection to the grid. All 6 of the crippled Fukushima nuclear reactor were reconnected to the national grid on Tuesday. But clearly you can't reconnect something to the grid that does that, right? That's reactor 1, that's reactor 3, and reactor 4 is to your left. You can't reconnect these things to the grid. But that's the mainstream media. That's France 24. That's the government media in France. And we've actually, if you go through my, you type in my video, France 24, you're going to find a 2-hour show of headlines just from France 24 like this. Blatant, vicious, hateful lies. Right from the get-go. It's really something to watch the video. It's hard to comprehend, but it's actually a really well done video. So you can't connect something to a grid when it doesn't exist anymore, first off. Second off, if it was just one of the reactors blew up, you can't get near the other ones because you've got fuel rods and assemblies, reactor cores tossed all over the site. There is no connecting to the grid, right? So Friday, March the 25th, and this is the Nuclear Regulatory Agency. Now I put links below to the Freedom of Information where you can look at this stuff yourself. And if you go through both of the links I got below, you go through all of that, then you can kind of appreciate what kind of hell I went to find the information I got tonight. So this is reactor 1 detonating. This was on, all of the reactors detonated before the 16th. That's reactor 1 blown up. Reactor 1 is that one right there. Reactor 2 blew up, and they're going to talk about that. Reactor 3, this is reactor 3 detonation. These are 190-foot, 19-story, 65-meter buildings. You're going to see big chunks falling back to Earth. That's the reactor core and the fuel pools falling back to Earth. It's unbelievable what we're talking about. We've never seen anything like that on our planet before. And we have four buildings that lost their entire inventories. Each of the buildings, by the way, dwarf all nuclear meltdowns combined. And each of these buildings, without the fuel pools, are equal to 100 Chernobyls. The inventories are. We got a bunch of little videos for the end of the show tonight from today. Lots of wins today. Every muscle in my body hurts. Okay, so this is the video of the detonation of reactor 1 to your left and reactor 3 to your right. These are catastrophic detonations we're talking about. And yet France 24, the government media of France, is claiming they reconnected these reactors to the grid. Okay, so away we go. So there's 1,000 nanograys in a microsievert. There's 1,000 microsieverts in a millisievert. There's 1,000 millisieverts in a sievert. So this is the 11th. Yeah, this, you can see the date over there. And I took screen captures of the days for radioactive fallout according to the French. So on the 12th, and so now you're up to 1,000 nanograys because reactor 1, I blew up, right? But that's only 1.5 microsieverts. It's a millionth of a sievert. It's an impossibly low number for a nuclear power plant as it is. Okay, so over there you can see, and I'm going to dart over there for a second. So what you're looking at there, that's the plume coming out, and the date is right here. That's the 12th, and that's March, and that's 2011. And this is the French government itself. So when you see each of these maps, check the date up in the top there. Okay, so March, that's the 12th. So a nanogray is 0.069 microsieverts. Just so we're all on the right pages. So 1,307 nanograys is equal to 1.3 microsieverts. Yeah, 1.3 microsieverts. So now, that once you get past nanograys, the first 1,000, then they're going to start counting in microsieverts, which is like a U, right? You see that U? And then the sievert, and then the hours. And these numbers are completely dishonest. Site. And this is from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in the United States, by the way. And so you can see the different, you can see the times, right? The dates, then the times, and then the areas. And they just filled this, they just sat there with a piece of paper, start marking numbers in. And look at this one where you got all these low, tiny numbers, but that one says 385 at the front gate. But a few minutes later, it's 6.6 microsieverts at the gate. So you see some of this strange stuff. So we're still on the 12th. Look at all the times to your left. This is really important. Now, I'll put links to this particular PDF file, which is from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's website, where they post it, and at the very bottom of my description, you'll find links to the full 4.4 million redacted emails. I call them redacted. They're not all redacted, but quite a lot are. And this week we're not covering the redacted stuff. Now tomorrow night I'm going to be covering die-offs. We're going to peek back at 2023 and cover some of the recent stuff. Okay, so location. On the 12th, 13th. So to your left over there, you see the yellow. That's what the plume looked like on the 13th. So the plume is well out into the ocean. At that point, it's probably 300-400 miles out into the ocean. But at the site itself, it's barely registering anything. Some nasty people, eh? So 13th, all of these numbers are the 13th. Because this is gold, this stuff. So now the 14th. On the 14th, the plume is starting to become more pronounced, right? And you can see the tiny numbers, and the discrepancies in the numbers are crazy. The 410, look how often the 410 shows up. See that? So the NRC, in 100 hours after the quake, so that administration, because the administration there now is totally different, right? We hear the radiation levels are up even in Tokyo, and reports that the spent fuel pools 1, 2, and 3 have started to boil. Now, if a fuel pool is boiling, that's a meltdown. They're refusing to call it a meltdown, so they're going to call it boiling. But that's a nuclear meltdown. It's boiling because it's now getting thousands of degree temperatures. It's completely out of control. But this is hindsight. This is November 18, 2011. We're looking back. But when you look at the 14th, you can see the plume is, Japan basically has disappeared in the plume. And this is still the 14th. 14th. Now we're at the 15th, and you can see the numbers. Now they're up at 1.2 microsieverts. So 1,000 or millisieverts. 1,000 microsieverts is like you're looking at their 1,200s, or say 1,191 microsieverts, is 1.2 millisieverts. There's 1,000 microsieverts in a millisievert. And it's just unbelievable that they would even use the word microsievert and millisievert. It's unbelievable because you're talking about radioactive massive plumes. You know. So 14, now we're at the 15th. Now you can see the numbers are reflecting something happened, but they're not reflecting, because they're reflecting venting. They're not reflecting the actual nuclear meltdown. And so on the French's model of the 15th of March, the same date as these numbers that you're looking at, the plume is now about 2,000 miles. But the plume spreads out quite quickly. Again, they refusing to acknowledge that it's a millisievert is stunning. So now we're at the 16th of March. And look at the plume now. Now it's touching the America coastline, basically coming ashore in California. So March the 16th, which is this day here, France says Japan has lost control and the French will leave the country. And this is a French model that was released right away. Now we got 10,000 microsieverts, which is 10 millisieverts. I got highlighted there for the 16th, which is still completely irrelevant to the real number, because the numbers that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is using is from TEPCO's alleged venting, but you couldn't vent anything, right? You weren't venting anything by the 17th because the reactors were completely gone at that stage. These are lethal doses anywhere. You don't see anybody running around or walking around because it's lethal doses. They got to go out and Shanghai a whole bunch of homeless in order to get anything done eventually. So that's the 17th. Now 17, the plume is getting is serious menace at this stage. So now they're talking about 3.5 microsieverts, a lousy 3.5 millisieverts rather, is a ridiculously low number on the 17 because you had 4 reactors that blew up and 8 fuel pools that blew up. This is the worst event that ever happened to humanity. It's truly the most important story in history. History will recognize this not this administration won't let it happen, obviously, but at some point, history will recognize this as the most catastrophic event to ever happen to Earth. Okay, so by the 18th, which is 7 days after the tsunami and 2 days after the last reactor blew up, the plume is now very, very, that's a serious plume. So the 18th, now the numbers are gone down. It's absurd. It's just really absurd. The numbers are for the 19th. Okay, so that's the 19th. Now look at the plume. Now it's covering Western Canada, Alaska. It's covering a lot of Asia. It's covering all the way down to New Mexico. And the entire coastline. Hawaii is obviously buried in that. And that's... Let me go backwards here. So this building is completely gone. This is they only got one fire truck, so this is a very, very desperate attempt. And the people I'm going to show you right here, these would have died that day or that hour. They were used just to get their picture, basically. These were considered disposable. And they're spraying reagent, and it bonds to the fuel particulates because they're splitting atoms, right? And that's supposed to bond with them and drop them down to the earth and keep the air dose down a bit. So they were sacrificed. They would have died that day. When you see pictures like this, any nuclear academic on the planet, so on the 20th is when they suggested, somebody suggested to the Nuclear Regulatory Agency to use the big cement truck. So when you see the red cement crane over there, it means you're past the 20th. And I'll keep going here. So we're still on the 19th. Now we're at the 20th. So the plume on the 20th looked like this. And America is half covered at this stage and half the Pacific Ocean. This is the 21st. This is the 22nd. This is the 23rd and 24th. And so the whole planet now is compromised. All the drinking water, all the food is compromised permanently. Now we're going to, this is a catalyst now for the destruction of the ecosystem. We've never seen a plume like this in our history. And so the species and humans can't avoid breathing this in. You can't avoid it, no matter who you are. And you're not immune to it, even though you might think you are. You might be wealthy, you might be poor, you might be whatever. But nobody's immune to this. You don't have an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. And the only defense you got against it is you fight back. They're coming after you. You need to fight back. They're going to war against you. You need to gut up, and you need some courage. And you don't worry. Get educated, and education will empower you. You got to fight back. You got no choice. Silence is what they're counting on. And they cannot survive criticism. I mean, look at the way they have attacked me. It's unbelievable what they've done to me. But it's, I'm in a unique position where they don't really have anybody else to pick on. You got 1,000 public relation firms ready to gut any dissenting voices, and so they got to sharpen their knives on poor Dana. March the 16th. This is the Nuclear Regulatory. Japan events links and statements excerpts from the states of Washington, Alaska, Oregon, California, Hawaii, and EPA RadNet info. What a scam the EPA RadNet info was. So that's the 16th. The state of Alaska, along with the federal counterparts, is continually monitoring the situation in Japan regarding their nuclear reactors. According to the officials, at this time, there is no immediate or anticipated threat of nuclear radiation reaching Alaska. What was the date on that? That was the 16th. So it's on its way to Alaska, but it hasn't reached it yet. But it's coming. Right, and by, let me go backwards. But the 31st of March, 20 days later, that's what it looked like. Alaska is buried. Washington said the same thing. We don't expect significant levels of radiation, despite the fact the plume was on its way. And they knew the meltdown was just starting. Oregon done the same thing. No health risk to Oregon from Japan's radiation events. California done the same thing. California came out. We urge Californians not to take potassium iodine as a precautionary measure. It is not necessary given the current circumstances in Japan, and it can be sent. Now, it was 100% important to take the iodine at this point before it showed up, so you can saturate your thyroid glands. You can't stop the radiation from coming in your body, but you're gonna slow down the ingression into your thyroid and your pituitary gland, because your thyroid is going to provide the hormones to your pituitary. And what that means, though, is that when you saturate your thyroid gland with anthropogenic man-made radiation, then you're producing radioactive hormones. And the hormones regulate every function in your body and your brain. And so you don't want radioactive hormones introduced. It's bad enough it's going to get in your body. It's going to sequester in your muscles, your organs, and your bones. And it's going to compromise your immune system, which is going to leave you more susceptible to pathogens and viruses. Apologize for not turning the sound down before I gargle. Hawaii. The Department of Health Indoor and Radiological Health Branch is closely monitoring information on the radiation releases, and with the current size of the release and the distance from Hawaii, no public health risk is expected. The distance from Hawaii. Well, you can see the distance meant nothing. It covered the entire planet in a very thick plume, and this plume is not based upon the inventories that were actually lost. They're based upon Japan's TEPCO, which shouldn't exist because it's just a corporation. And so when you have a nuclear meltdown, you leave a corporation. Like if Walmart had owned it, Walmart would have been responsible for the nuclear meltdown. If McDonald's had owned that power plant, McDonald's would have been left in charge for the nuclear meltdown. And TEPCO, which is no different than Walmart or McDonald's, was left in charge instead of the nuclear agencies, the nuclear universities. And that's why you don't want nuclear on your planet. Radioactive strontium found in the Hawaii milk, and that cesium and iodine were both at least 600% above the EPA maximum containment levels in Hawaii's milk. What they were saying was if you drink 2 gallons, you exceeded your yearly dose. But your yearly dose is from natural, not man-made stuff. And they conflated them in order to pull the wool over your eyes like they just done that time. It's absolutely unequivocally outrageous that they would suggest that this is equal to potassium, magnesium, iron, and carbon, when you can't make dirty bombs out of natural stuff, right? Only out of man-made stuff. And we designate it man-made because the sun doesn't create it. So the distance had nothing to do with it. March 16, 2011, Nuclear Industrial Safety Agency. So March 16, the plume looked like that. It was underway and they knew it. Nuclear power station, Fukushima Daiichi. The white smoke like steam generated from Unit 3. This is not steam, this is nuclear meltdown emissions. It's surreal that they would even use the word, right? They would even invoke the word steam. I got a picture of that from, these are the original pictures. A lot of them are the original pictures in the right time frame. So this is what it would have looked like on that day, on the 16th, right? So the reactor cores and the fuel pools are at the top of the building. There is no top to the building. And so they call it steam, call it white smoke, and then like steam as the lowest form of life, because the people that, because these are Freedom of Information files from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, see? So the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is unequivocally aware of what that means, and it's not steam and it's not white smoke. It's a deadly lethal plume. Because of the possibilities that the primary containment vessel Unit 3 was damaged, the operators evacuated from the central control room of Unit 3 and 4, which is a shared facility. So like they had that footage. They had that picture. They had it from satellites. They had it from their own drones. They flew Geiger counters, sophisticated airplanes for counting radiation over the site right away. They've covered it over and over and over. So when you look at a building, this was also the plutonium mixed oxide fuel facility. And the plutonium mixed oxide fuel is where they reclaim uranium from reactor cores that have already gone through a chain reaction. And this is an abomination upon humanity, because just a typical lethal nuclear meltdown or even nuclear emissions from the fuel pools are 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. So when you put it through a chain reaction a second time, this is hellish atoms we're talking about. This is hellish stuff. And the industry's entire legacy is predicated upon deceit and deception. Telling the truth is not in their lexicon. Because of the possibility that the primary containment vessel of Unit 3 was damaged, the operators evacuated from central control. We already read that, Dana. Smarten up. I'm sorry. March the 16th again. Thereafter, the operators returned to the room and restarted the operation for water injections. Well, March the 16th, this is what it looked like. You never went back into the room. You didn't restart water injections. Because when you look at the evidence, that's blatantly clear. These are lethal doses everywhere. You are not going. They never actually went back into the control room until 7 years later, and that was just to take a picture. They were suited up. TEPCO reported that no fire could be confirmed on the ground, March the 16th. Well, how can there be no fire when this happened? For Unit 4 to implement the injections of water to the spent fuel storage pool. Well, you can't put water in a storage pool when the storage pool doesn't exist. As for the member of the self-defense forces, a person who injured due to the explosion of mixed oxide fuel, the plutonium mixed oxide fuel reactor number 3, and they call it a unit instead of a reactor, instead of giving it the prominence it deserves, the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant was transported to the National Institute of Radiological Sciences, scum of the earth in other words, and the examination resulted in no internal exposure where reactors are blowing up around them. And they were discharged on March the 16th. So they were already saying, we will kill everybody who comes through our door to protect the nuclear industry, because without the nuclear industry, they don't have a job. They don't have a pension. And so sacrificing a soldier is not a big discrepancy. Resulted in no internal exposure discharged. Like, whoever wrote that, I'd like to kick the shit out of them. That's reactor 3 explosion that they're talking about. If you're on the ground there, you got a nasty friggin' dose, a lethal dose, you're going to die eventually. So they sent him home to die. Well, he didn't die of radiation, he died of a heart attack. How many times have we seen him do that again? Unit 1, aka Reactor 1, because the Nuclear Regulatory Commission refuses to be straightforward. Seawater was injected into the containment vessel via the fire extinguisher system on March the 13th. Well, you weren't injecting anything in the Unit 1 on March the 13th because Unit 1 had detonated over there on March the 12th, the day before. There is no... And because they knew these emails would be released to the public, and I got some of the conversation coming up where they're talking about this stuff is recorded, and I have to do emails on my BlackBerry. We can't do it here, kind of stuff. The sound of the explosion in U1 occurred on March the 12th. Well, it wasn't the sound of an explosion. It was a friggin' explosion, a highly visible explosion. And what was really interesting was you had Unit 1 on the camera exploding. You had Unit 2 on the camera exploding. But you didn't have Unit 3, but you didn't have Unit 4 exploding. So Unit 1, they put this Kevlar sarcophagus on it. It was built off-site and brought in and assembled with cranes because it was already built off-site. And so everything is kept together by gravity. It's very neat what they've done there. And those panels, there's nobody up there hooking the panels up because it's a lethal dose. Water injection function was sustained March the 13th on Unit 2. Well, because right alongside of Unit 2 was Unit 1, there was zero possibility you're going to be working at Unit 2 because it's lethal doses everywhere. There's no way. You had 1,200 miles of the coastline ripped off the coast. There was no telephone poles left to carry power. The site was hit with a catastrophic tsunami. Came straight through the site. So once that came through your site, your switches and your buttons don't work no more. Period. You know that's true, right? Temporary interruptions of the injections, March the 14th. Temporary interruptions. There was no temporary interruptions because on the first day, the original first hour, this creature came through your neighborhood and that was the end of your neighborhood. Water injection function was sustained at 1400 hours March the 13th. And reactor water levels were decreased on March the 14th, which is when reactor 3 blew up. But see, as soon as reactor 1 blew up, the whole site's off limit. And the people that were there were on the other side of the pump house, just close to the ocean. March the 14th, a sound of explosions was made in Unit 2. Well, it actually blew one of those big panels out, and it burnt continuously for several days. And then it went China syndrome deep into the earth, so to speak. As the pressure in the suppression chamber decreased, there was possibilities that an incident occurred in the chamber March the 15th in Unit 2. Because this is the NRC, they started their cover story right away. If it exploded, they said they were feeding it water. If it melted down, they said that everything was hunky-dory. So these are the emissions from a blown-out panel, which is designed to blow out. Which now we know that it liquefied. We've never seen a reactor core liquefied uranium liquid burning at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And because of the unique property, it doesn't need oxygen to burn, right? Under the seawater injections, March the 16th, so the time of pumping water from the ocean and injecting it into the buildings, but March the 16th, everything is gone. For Unit 3, the explosion like Unit 1 occurred around the reactor buildings, like a halo, Dana. The white smoke like steam generated from Unit 3. This wasn't white smoke, this was a boom. This was a nuclear meltdown, causes the hydrogen buildup. This is the nuclear meltdown. So let's do that again. That's reactor 3 going pop. This was the plutonium mixed oxide reactor. And the heavy stuff falling back down to Earth is the reactor cores and the fuel pools. That explosion was felt 25 miles away by an Associated Press reporter. So the color white smoke, what's the point of having an NRC when their job is just to cut your throat? Their job is to stab everybody and every species on the planet in the back. As soon as you turn your back on them, they're going to jump on you and try to stab you to death. That's the equivalent of what they're actually doing to you. These are, by definition, the most cowardly people I've ever come across. And I've seen my share of it. Because of the possibilities that the primary containment vessel of Unit 3 was damaged. Like, to suggest that this is damaged. And this was right away. The cover story was immediate. Now they're saying it never even happened as of July the 13th, 2023. And Unit 4, thereafter, the operators returned to the room and restarted the operation for water injection. You can't go back. You can't go back and inject water by pushing a button on a site where a massive tsunami ran through. That's the end of those. Those days are gone. When that happens, there is no buttons to push anymore. I gotta do the peroxide, hydrogen peroxide, because I got doing a bit of hacking. That should clear up the hacking right away for me. I can feel like I can breathe so much better right away whenever I do that. I do that, I don't know how many times a day. Just as any kind of scratchy throat whatsoever, that's how I resolve it. Any kind of flu symptoms whatsoever, that's how I get rid of it. It's gone right away too. If I got a headache, normally when I get a headache, I'll spray it out. I had a headache the other day, and I picked up that, and the headache was gone. As soon as, before I can lay it down, the headache was literally gone. And it's just hydrogen peroxide, so it's completely harmless. You're just adding oxygen. So spraying your jugular veins means you're distributing the oxygen right through your whole body immediately, right? And because it's your jugular vein, it goes right through you get all this oxygen. It's a good kind of oxygen too, right? And restarted the operation of the water injections. You're not injecting water and restarting water injections in buildings that are completely gone, right? It was confirmed that part of the wall of the operation area of Unit 4 was damaged on March the 15th. The fire at Unit 4 occurred on March the 15th. TEPCO reported the fire was extinguished spontaneously, and the temperature of the water in the spent fuel storage pool of reactor 4 had increased 84 degrees Celsius March the 14th. Now listen, there's a tsunami ran through your site. There was no gauges running. This is hyperbole. This is just guesstimations. This is simply not possible to make these assertions based on facts, because first off, you got detonated Medusa, reactor 3, right alongside of it. And the fire occurred at Unit 4 on March the 15th, and TEPCO reported no fire could be confirmed on the ground. Well, it's clear something happened. It was the meltdown, right? Fukushima Radioactive Nuclear Power Station, TEPCO. Unit 1, automatic shutdown, cold shutdown on March the 14th. Unit 2, cold shutdown on March the 14th. Unit 3, cold shutdown on March the 12th. Unit 1, cold shutdown on March the 15th. If the reactors were perfect, you still couldn't go into a cold shutdown that quick. So the zero possibility, number 3, is into a cold shutdown. And there's zero possibility reactor 4 is to do a cold shutdown. It's zilch. So reactor 3 and 4, there is no cold shutdown. I keep doing that to you, my apologies. Major plant perimeters of the 16th of March. Cold shutdown, cold shutdown, cold shutdown, cold shutdown. This is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, United States. This is shocking. This is a shocking betrayal. This is not even contempt. This is hate, what they're doing to you. Possibility and radiation exposures on the 14th of March, or March the 16th. Exposures of the residents, including the evacuees from Futaba Public Welfare Hospital. We covered a bit of this last night or the night before. 133 persons. 23 persons counted more than 13,000 counts per minute were decontaminated. You can't decontaminate a person. As for the firemen, no contamination was reported to the National Firefighting Agency. Well, first off, they only had one truck there. This guy right here. And if you're working on a truck, you're injured. There's no way you're escaping injuries. And they're on the ocean side. They're shooting in the dark to try to, in the direction of the reactors. They're not shooting at the reactors. They're on the other side of the pump houses. And there's no way they can reach the reactors from right there. This is symbiotic, right? A fire broke out. And we got a couple of videos we're going to play now from MIT and Harvard or Stanford or Yale, I can't remember. A fire broke out on the 4th floor of the Unit 4 reactor building, 4th floor. And the radiation monitor reading increased outside the buildings to 30 millisieverts. 30,000 microsieverts between Unit 2 and Unit 3. It was 400 millisieverts, 400,000 microsieverts besides Unit 3. It was actually 1 million sieverts outside of Reactor 1. 100 millisieverts besides Unit 4 at March the 15th. That didn't, but we didn't see these numbers in the official data that I showed you at the beginning from another PDF file. And I linked both of those files below, including this one. TEPCO later announced the fire was burned out. Another fire was observed March the 16th, then disappeared. These are nuclear meltdowns. This is hardly the language you would expect to be used. Other staff and workers, then 50 TEPCO employees, the Fukushima 50s, who are engaged in water injection operation have been evacuated. White smoke, which is not white smoke, it's deadly toxins from a nuclear meltdown, rising from the vicinities of Reactor 3, March the 16th. TEPCO estimated the failing to cool the spent fuel pools has resulted in evaporation generation of steam. That's the evaporated generation steam they're talking about. It's not, right? It's an actual meltdown. So they're saying that they're at the top of Reactor 4 was a little fire. And it extinguished itself, Dana. What? That's pretty cool. Can I see a picture? No. What do you need a picture for? Well, I like to see it with my own eyes. I'm kind of a guy. Because here's what the MIT professor had to say about Reactor 4. He's going to talk about an oil fire. And I think it's time for me to go in and redo Yale, Stanford, Oxford, and MIT, because I came out and done that originally back in the day, right? Where they done presentations on Fukushima in the first few weeks, questions and answers with a seated audience, no less. And they put that on the internet to pacify anybody that was trying to understand what was going on. And the big a-hole that I am, I went out and challenged every one of those videos and ripped them apart. We've done it several times in the first couple of years, right? And with the little information we had at the time, we were able to show that these people were completely dishonest. Lawyers, right? Okay, so let's play this. I got to turn my volume down and I'll adjust your volume in real time. And at the very end of this short video. He's going to talk about
I'd like to welcome our own students from nuclear science and engineering and other members of the community here at MIT, and also visitors, I think, from elsewhere.
And shortly after 3:30, there was a hydrogen explosion in the building of reactor 1. So when of that explosion, not long after, the evacuation zone was extended to 20 kilometers radius. On Monday at 11 a.m., so this is now on the third day, there was a hydrogen explosion of building of reactor 3. In the meantime, reactor 2 fuel rods, what is reported to have been fully uncovered, and they quite soon began to inject seawater, borated seawater. At 6:14 a.m. on Tuesday, that's today, of course, but since they're 13 hours ahead of us, that was quite a while ago now, there was a third explosion. This was in reactor 2. This was inside, as far as we can tell, inside or near the containment. And another worry that arose was on that same day was that the reactor 4 building, reactor 4 is adjacent to reactor 3, was observed to be aflame. And this was sort of at the same time that radiation levels were increasing further. There was a lot of suspicion that this fire was in the spent fuel pool. However, since that time, TEPCO has said that there was an oil leak in a water pump and that was what was the cause of the fire.
Right, so they're saying that never caught fire. That's MIT. And what was it? Most of these videos I put the date on March the 15th. So there's not much new reported by the Japan's Atomic Industries Forum. Previously spent fuel pools levels decreasing, and currently it is reported, this was the 16th of, now all the reactors are blown up at this stage, are also increasing, showing that trend through no data. So this is what it looked like on the 16th. Hateful scumbags, and they had those pictures. So these are Freedom of Information files that clearly show the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is evil and committing crimes against humanity. And when you read through this stuff, like the way they are with each other, it's like a big joke where they're laughing and giggling like children. TEPCO confirmed that the fire occurred at Unit 4 was extinguished on 11th p.m. on March. Simply not true. And for Unit 4, they extinguished fire to prevent the occurrence of a recriticality. So what are they talking about? Are they saying there was a criticality going on in Unit 4? That's quite an interesting statement. It contradicts everything else that they said, don't it? I shouldn't have been there, my apology. Given the available information, we continue to be very concerned about the conditions of the 3 reactor cores and the 2 spent fuel pools. And that's Bill Bouchard. I got the video, remember, because I cut all these videos out 12 years ago or something. Based on calculations performed by the NRC experts, true experts, you'll get that joke in a minute, for the situation as a whole, we now believe that it is appropriate for the United States residents within 50 miles of the Fukushima reactors to evacuate. Our recommendation is based on NRC guidelines, NRC. And we've been covering the NRC all night so far. And they have been found to be wanting. For public safety that would be used in the U.S. under similar circumstances. At the same time, however, we do not expect any part of the United States or its territories to experience any harmful levels of radiation. So this was the C-SPAN, and they were on Capitol Hill. And so Greg Jasko wasn't there yet. He was the current head of the NRC in the United States at the time. And Bill Bouchard, to his right, was sitting at the table. And so the government was asking them to articulate why they were waiting for JASCO to show up. And Buddy kept saying, I got no comment, I got no comment, I'd rather not comment. And so we'll play that clip here. It's quite telling.
We're here to get a briefing on the ongoing crisis associated with the nuclear power plants in Japan. I'm very privileged that we have the executive director for operations at the NRC here, Bill Borchardt.
I couldn't speculate on that.
An expert, a true expert as well.
Again, I wouldn't
Okay.
wish to speculate.
So we feel very blessed that you could come and stand in until the chairman comes, and we really do welcome you.
Again, I can't
Okay.
speculate.
Well, teaching all of us the lessons that we have to take away from what is happening.
I couldn't speculate on that. What we believe is a significant amount of fuel damage in the three operating reactors, units 1, 2, and 3, which were operating at the time of the earthquake. And then because of the spent fuel problems that are in Unit 4
Right.
of that reactor facility. All of those factors taken into combination, if that same type of source term, that same type of radiological problem existed in the United States, our recommendation to state governments would be to evacuate
Okay.
out to 50 miles.
Well, that's a really good point, because I'm asking you, do you know how many people live within 50 miles of San Onofre nuclear power plant?
I do not know.
Well, I'm going to tell you how many people. 7.4 million people.
Now his job is to know everything, right? He's the next man, right? He knows all the answers. And if you go back and watch that clip, you can see the headline there, March 16, 2009, C-SPAN, Japan's nuclear plant crisis. I doubt if it's still available. I have the whole video on here. I should find it and upload it, actually. Now, I put all the pictures in there. And so he's the head of the American NRC. There's zero possibility he didn't understand or have access to those pictures. There's zero possibility, right? Records withheld in part. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Japan's Fukushima Daiichi Liaison 1 audio files. I didn't have access to them. And the date was March the 11th. Doing fine, so this was communications going on, and there was a lot of it. And I'm reading through it. I'm trying to be patient. And I'm latching on just about anything if I can find it. And that's the problem. What I'm doing is I grab a lot of information, but I can't use it all. And so when I do the preamble, I have to sit here and flush out stuff that doesn't really tell the story, right? So it's very annoying, because when you got several hundred pieces of information, you got to go through everything, reread everything, and then either decide to keep it or exclude it, depending on whether it told the story. Because you're trying to learn the story, and you're reading through several thousand of these in one day, and it's mind-numbing, painful to do, because the majority of it is useless. See? And so when you see something that might be useful, you got a tendency to screen capture it, and then you keep reading, and you're saying, well, it didn't even go in that direction that I thought it was going to go, and so now it's no longer pertinent. Doing fine, so you're standing up there within the IRC. Sarah Morgs says, yeah. Randy says, so what's the stand-up? So this is March 11th. So we are preparing in case there's a release at the Japanese plant. And he repeats her, in case there's a release. Yes. And then Randy says, I see. Sarah says, they, which is the International Atomic Energy Agency, has issued information that a release is potential. Then Randy repeats that potential is one. And Sarah, this is the NRC we're talking about. The coolant level is getting low. Remember, Hillary Clinton said he flew into coolant to put in the reactor fuel pools, but you can't actually do that, see, because it was meltdowns. the coolant levels are getting low, and Randy says, yes, sir, this is one of the units, which aka reactors. Randy says, wow, oh my gosh, okay. So I got a call earlier that I think it was Janelle. And Randy says, and Sarah told me that if this is about the Japanese plant and what may be an impending release, and Bill Meyer says, don't tell him it's me. Then he says again, don't tell him it's me, don't tell him it's me. Now, he knew these potential to be released, but he wasn't worried about it because they own the media, they own the universities. And so they weren't really thinking anybody was ever going to see this again. All of this stuff, right, is basically considered gone down the black hole. That story has never been told. And we're telling that story finally tonight. And all this week, the stories we're telling are stories that, if I didn't dig them up, would have never got told. And the stories are terrifying, and we're barely scratching the surface. You're talking about 4.4 million emails. I'm linked to all of them in the bottom of my description, all the way down. And every show I'm linked to those emails, trying to get a conversation going. It's not happening. And so now I'm going out and digging up the information like a smug and doing it myself because I'm stupid. I'm a sucker for punishment. And I was outdoors in the shed this morning from 9:30 till, for 3 hours, 12:30 or something. And then I was back again from 2 to 4:30. I'll show you those videos at the end of it. Right, now one of the things that we may want, so it's been a long day, in other words. Right, now one of the things that we may want to do is identify some staff members who were around back when Chernobyl days and see if they saw this then. You know, like the John Kinnermans of the world. I looked up John Kinnerman's Chernobyl, and I found some, but I decided not to go down that path. Oh, we're on a recorded line. I'm going to have to call you on my BlackBerry. Josie is concerned about, I didn't want to start shooting emails back and forth. So they went to a secure line rather than use it where this could get released. So nobody, they were talking about the cover up, basically. So all of this is from the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Fukushima Health Effects, Terry Brock, Office of the Nuclear Regulatory Research. Patricia Milliken, Senior Legal Advisor. So then they put this headline there, Helen Caldicott. We're going to see an incredible increase of cancer, leukemia, and down the time track genetic diseases. Well, actually, they started right away. Because they're one of the first ones to show up, like Down syndrome and autism, for instance. That's the first studies they're going to do in the nuclear industry, and Helen Caldicott knows it. Yet she refused to acknowledge it. Not just in Japan, but in the Northern Hemisphere, particularly North America. So Helen, I put these pictures you're going to see down here is the pictures I put in. So that's reactor 4, but that's the fake one over right there. Now Helen is going to be asked in an interview, and she's done hundreds of these interviews, where she says they got the fuel out of the pool, but there is no fuel pool at reactor 4. And Ernie Gunnison does the same thing. But I'm going to play that little clip because it's a very telling clip.
Let me ask you this. You've said that if the spent fuel pool in number 4 collapses, that you would evacuate your family from Boston. Do you think we would ever know the truth of what's going on there? And the reason I ask is because we've seen coverage in the national news media here in the United States from ABC News and others that take video cameras in, saying that they're being given exclusive access to number 4 in the removal of the fuel rods, which is said to have begun. And what we see in the video being shared here in America is a pristine interior building. It doesn't look like a building in which the top blew off in a hydrogen explosion.
The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings, removed the debris from the top of Building 4, and it does look pristine.
Will you tell me the building to your right and the building to your left? They're both the official picture. Only one of them is real, and it ain't the picture on the left. And even today, they, like, in 2013, that's what that building looked like. They put a contraption over it to hide it, and then claimed that they were in the building getting the fuel out of the pool. So the National Cancer Institute in Rockville and Kiyohiko Mabuchi is with the National Cancer Institute. And he said experts agree that there is not likely to be a detectable rise in thyroid cancers or leukemia, that the two cancers most likely to result from the accident. And they love to make you think of only cancer. And every cancer in a book can show up from anthropogenic man-made radiation. There may be some increases in cancer risk. They may not be detectable statistically. So typically in Japan, each year there's 1 to 2 out of 1 million children had thyroid tumors.
But there's clear evidence rates have risen. Before the disaster in 2011, the rate of thyroid cancer was between 1 and 2 cases in every million children.
And so after, it was 13,646 out of 38,000. I forgot to find that. Don't worry, I'm usually pretty good. I'm not going to say I'm perfect. Because Lord knows I'm not perfect. I don't know where it's to. It's scary. It's scary how absolutely hateful this industry is. How much it despises you. The average person can't possibly comprehend it. But they hate your guts, right? So. But
there's clear evidence rates have risen. Before the disaster in 2011, the rate of thyroid cancer was between 1 and 2 cases in every million children.
Yeah, so it's normally 1 to 2 per million. In 2012, it was 358,000 out of 1 million when you scaled it up. It was 35.8%. So it was basically 13,646 out of 40,000 children had thyroid tumors of 2 centimeters or bigger, and which is a massive tumor when it comes to thyroids, because your thyroid is only 3 by 5 centimeters. These are catastrophic numbers when it used to be 1 to 2 in a million, which means 358,000 out of 1 million when you scaled it up. Japan's National Cancer Center says the number of patients rose by 865,000 extra cancers in 2012. But cancer is just one of the many, many, many illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries and illnesses that'll manifest before cancer typically, except for when it comes to nuclear releases. And let's bring up the poll here because I keep meaning to bring it up and I keep forgetting. Does the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission's Fukushima nuclear meltdowns cover-up, because clearly from what you've seen tonight is a cover-up, qualify as an evil betrayal? And I can't see how it doesn't. But it's and on top of it, it's a 100% unassailably crimes against humanity we're talking about. How is this acceptable? Really, how is this acceptable that they done what they done? And I showed you the evidence tonight. It's stunning amount of evidence. And the guy who's lying is the National Cancer Institute. So what's the point of a National Cancer Institute when there's a crisis? They're the one that comes out and cuts your throat. What do you think they're doing to the victims at the National Cancer Institute? Do you really think he's trying to cure anybody? Do you really think that person at the Nuclear Cancer Institute gives a fuck about anybody there? Any of the victims? To come out and say what he just said in that statement there and suggest there's no adverse side effects whatsoever is beyond reproach. It's evil. It's evil the average person can't comprehend, see? This is the biggest breach of academics in history, is the nuclear industry. And just it's so compromised, right? The universities got compromised, captured really, in the 40s and 50s through the Secrecy Act. And they started recruiting the students, and they were useful fucking idiots back then, right? They really were useful idiots. And that secrecy organization that permeated through the nuclear industry, through the Manhattan projects, is still active. It's gone underground, but it's 100% a black op, and it's funded heavily. And they've been stalking me, right? Like stalking me, showing up in restaurants right alongside of me. And they're trying to scare you, right? Intimidate you. And they picked the wrong one. Every time they do it to me, they just settle my resolve. Japanese author, extreme increase in mortality caused by cardiac diseases, and the death rates might give the creeps to some people. So in a single month in the Fukushima prefecture, the number of deaths were up 12.5%. An extra 12,700 people died compared to the same month before heart attacks. And the number of deaths caused by tumors was up 7.7%, an extra 2,000 people that died compared to the same month of the year before. And the number of cardiac diseases was up 14.6%. Those unbelievable numbers. And the only thing that they all got in common was Fukushima's perpetual emissions. Irreversible heart damage for children with 50 atoms per kilogram of cesium-137. See, but to only acknowledge cesium-137 is quite the quick mark, because the average person, if you talk to them, if they know anything about radiation, they're going to go cesium-137 or iodine-131, and that's where the brain is going to, 9 out of 10. And then the odd one will say plutonium. Yeah, plutonium. They'll go like that. I don't bother engaging with the public at all. It's pointless, right? You're not going to win any battles ever, in my position anyway. And so that's why I'm doing educational programs, because if you got access to somebody regularly and repeatedly, you can bring them on board, right, with the documentation eventually, right? I always say don't push it, right? Don't try to convince people, but bring it up, and then just let it go, because they're going to basically, who cares, right? Don't let that offend you. That's just a knee-jerk reaction, right? And a garbage can diagnosis that everything's going to be okay. But what you've done is you just planted a seed. Maybe a month or 2 months later, and you bring it up again. Now they're more open. Oh yeah, I remember something about it, and you mentioned it or whatever. But normally people reject it, so don't let that frustrate you. You're planting a seed, remember that. And so when you wear my t-shirts, my Calm Down Charlie t-shirts, is over 250. That's hilarious. How can you not like that? Let me see what we got here. Bring it up on the other screen. Yeah, because sometimes my t-shirts goes weird on me, eh? I don't know why it does that. That's the site, right? So my Calm Down Charlie, so you see them right there, Calm Down Charlie t-shirts. We sold over 250 of these guys. You filthy liar, you sick bastard. And so these are famous quotes by the most cowardly stalker we've ever come across, the most useless scum of the bag that humanity's ever seen. We affectionately call him Scumbag, but also Calm Down Charlie. He's got 10 years of stalking me. It's over 10 years now. You filthy liar, you scammer, you sick bastard, on the back. And on the front, you got Ishida Mashada, Tokyo Byo Chicago Division, a.k.a. Calm Down Charlie. You sick bastard. And the biggest seller, this one's doing pretty good, and you got different colors. There's pretty greens and little darker greens. That's the only colors they gave me was those 5 colors for that particular shirt. So I should have got a better shirt. And I wasn't really expecting it to take off. That still surprises me today. And so you can still get your Calm Down Charlie t-shirts. And there's many other t-shirts there. This one is a nice, even $28 Canadian. And they're actually really good quality. Beautiful colors. When you wash them, turn them inside out so you don't wash out the pictures. But apparently it's very good quality. And this one comes in good colors for the ladies out there. And if you're wearing this at the supermarket or in the shop or in the office, just don't say nothing about it, because people will automatically try to work out what the hell is going on, right? And then they invite you into the conversation. The Expeditions for Life, arrested for telling the truth about Fukushima. Oh yeah, they demonize me. But there's other shirts here too, besides the Calm Down Charlie t-shirts. See, this one over here, that picture, that's a great picture on it, by the way, of the 4 medias pretending they're in a building until you left that doesn't even exist. Why would all the major media worldwide take a chance and do something like that, right? That's a big question. You get the Fukushima Extinction Level Event mug for a lousy $15 Canadian. That's nothing. That's next to nothing. So you put that on your coffee desk. What would you rather have? Species or no species? That's such a great one. And on the other side, you got my Fukushima research expeditions. Birds and bees or nuclear power. That's what it says on the mug. Birds and bees or nuclear power. What would you rather have on the back of it, right? So that's what they're going to say. So you show them that side to them, and then they'll say, oh, birds and bees or nuclear power. And you say, well, that's a research expedition for 6 years, counting species after Fukushima nuclear meltdown. And then you show them the other side, and you say, what would you rather have? Birds and bees or nuclear, say? For $15, you take now, you buy now. You pay double if not. No, just kidding you. And so that's the only colors I was able to get for those mugs. And so the colors are pretty good. I should put out there a Calm Down Charlie mug, I suppose. Hey, Calm Down Charlie, coffee break. And Fukushima Extinction Level Event. These are super important t-shirts because we don't really do that this much. Pro-nuclear is a hate crime. That's a great t-shirt. Nuclear power plants are disease factories. That's another great one. You can get that in a little notebook too if you happen to use a notebook a lot. It's a good way of starting the conversation. What would you rather have, birds and bees or nuclear power? Was nuclear power worth an extinction level event? I can only get that one in brown. And because it was a full length, it was a nice material, and it was a long sleeve. And I think I got other shirts there. But you can get up to any size you want, basically. Was nuclear power worth an extinction of level event in post-Fukushima 100 species, pre-Fukushima 7,000? That's a very powerful shirt. And so is that picture there. What would you rather have, birds and bees to your left or nuclear power to your right? No species. Let's do one more shirt, just for badness. Pro-nuclear is save the whales, ban nuclear power. Save the insects, ban nuclear power. That's a great one too, isn't it? Both of those are fantastic shirts. And the picture of the whales is a picture I took myself up close to Alaska. Save the insects, ban nuclear power. See, that's a beautiful shirt. Someone's behind you. They might not even realize they read it, but subconsciously they picked it up. And the next year you'll have to see them at anti-nuclear protests because they don't understand. But you involuntarily invoked reality into the deteriorating plant threatens mass extinction around the world. And then on the front of it, it's just got I can't remember what it says, and I apologize for that. Let's do one more. Save the whales. We've done save the insects. Let's do a save the whales. Oh, that's the whale splashing and boat. And I got the video of that. Hang on here. Maybe I can find it. And then we'll get back into the show here. Little interlude. Yeah, I'm going to get the whole phone book because it covers so much of the die-offs. And I can't remember exactly where that... I got it on my desktop so I wouldn't lose it, right? But when I put it in to my search engine, it's not going to work. So let's get back to the show. I apologize to anybody who was waiting for the show to continue. We got lots more. But all of these shirts are great for starting a conversation. Nuclear Scumbag Show with Dana Durnford. Atoms for Degenerates. Atoms for Degenerates. And they would be two different shirts, I think. Let's click on that just out of curiosity what's on the other side. Supporting nuclear power is a hate crime. 50 becquerels a kilogram in humans, adults, lead to irreversible lesions in your vital organs. So 50 atoms, you can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle. So how are you supposed to perceive 50? How are you supposed to perceive 50, right? Skyrocketing cancer cases in Fukushima, alarming cancer rates after nuclear disasters. Child cancers are up 5,000%, and radiation doses may be considerably higher than estimated. A cancer outbreak shows officials must now prepare for the onset of leukemia and other diseases. Well, there's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. Ultimately, it's Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia. There's many mental illnesses, and there's not radiophobia, because that's what they like to put out, but there's very many real, tangible, devastating, just absolutely horrific radiation illnesses. Earthquake and tsunami leads to catastrophic failures at Fukushima nuclear power station, and large releases of radionuclides occurred. And so that's such a disrespectful way to frame what happened. That's such a deceitful and dishonest and disingenuous framing, connotations to put there. It's so different from the reality. And if the regulatory agency doesn't know the reality, then who should? I mean, these people, these are the worst humans imaginable. I'm not kidding you. These, what they done over since Fukushima, let alone the original. This is the original stuff. I believe this is the 20th or something. So these are huge releases, but these are actually, any other circumstances, this would be considered unbelievably catastrophic. But when you look at the enormity of what happened at Fukushima and how many reactors and fuel pools melted down, this number is an insult. It's a percent of a percent. It's an insult to the truth. And the NRC obviously hates your guts and is trying to murder you and all the species for their paycheck. It's just unbelievable. Thousands of people were evacuated. Again, right? They're doing the opposite of context. Status is September 2013. And so they have no shame whatsoever. They have no moral compass whatsoever. When I was reading this today, I was literally horrified. It made me weak a number of times to see what a betrayal it was. Because that was the word that kept crossing my mind all day. What a betrayal. Because in between it all, I was reading the conversations, and they were chatting, even though they were strangers, the majority of them, they were chatting like they were, they grew up in school together or something. And, they... So, they call it disinformation by nuclear proponents. Doesn't do it justice. What they're doing is criminal. What they're actually doing is revolting. Just bear with me for a minute. Set up for the next one. I'm definitely not feeling that good tonight. I'm feeling a bit better than I was earlier, but I think it's just I've worked so hard for so long, and the last week I pushed myself too far. And so hopefully because I didn't take the last weekend off. And just hang with me. Oh yeah, I forgot what I'm looking for, because some of my folders got so many folders in it, I don't even recognize it sometimes. Okay. There we go. There was some crazy stuff, eh? Just bear with me. Yeah, because we covered one a bit earlier. Talked about there was no firemen were harmed. There was also over 300 policemen that dropped dead from kidney failure. The majority of them. Workers dose as of October 2012, 25,000 workers were involved. 25,000 paper suits. What do you do with all the paper suits every day? Oh, that's right. TEPCO said he burnt 7,000 paper suits a day. We were picking on him for quite a while about it. And then he came out with this story saying he burned 7,000 paper suits a day in their incinerators. I was laughing for like 2 weeks after that one. 3,750 TEPCO employees. They're not at Fukushima. And 21,000 subcontractors. It's absurd to suggest there's 21,000 or 3,700 TEPCO employees at Fukushima, multiple nuclear meltdowns. It's completely unbelievable, because they would be responsible for the healthcare. They're not going to send their actual the subcontractors and contractors that are homeless and the destitute and the victims of society. They don't pay healthcare for them, right? But their own employees, they've got to pay healthcare. So there's zero chance they're going to let their own employees go on the site. So when I say there's zero possibility they're on the site, that's what I'm talking about. Because it would cost them long term. They won't do it. We see this in every nuclear site out there when it comes to changing fuel. They bring in 1,000 plus outside workers, right? Just the blue collar workers. The laborers, the welders, the pipe fitters, the insulators. Average effective dose of 25,000 workers over 19 months was 12 millisieverts, 12,000 microsievert. You're at a nuclear meltdown. That's what you're getting every 3 seconds. You're at a nuclear meltdown where fuel rods and reactor cores were tossed all over the site, where the reactors are constantly melting down. You can't contain the emissions. It can't be done. And where the whole country was covered in radiation. Like, Osaka is a bigger dose, 600 miles away, than it is what they're getting right there. And that the stacks right there were 10 sieverts per hour, which is quite a ways away from the reactors. So that's a lethal dose, 10 to 25 sieverts per hour at ground level. But yet, nobody there got any doses, they're saying, right? 8,750 workers received total doses in excesses of 10 millisieverts, 10,000 microsieverts. This is the U.S. United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission, protecting people and the environment, which is the very last thing they got on their mind, isn't it? 2 employees received significant skin doses of 2 to 3 sieverts from standing in contaminated water. Remember that story? The standard working dose limit for Japanese workers is 50 millisieverts, 50,000 microsieverts a year. Prior to the accident, the emergency dose limit was at 100 millisieverts per year. Why would you have a dose at 100 millisieverts a year at a nuclear power plant when nothing is getting out? Because you can't contain it because it's hemorrhaging from the fuel pools, right? Most exposed workers record a thyroid dose between 2 and 12 grays, primarily due to the 131 inhalation. I thought they had paper suits on. Dose which can't protect you. It's a joke when you hear me say paper suits. Dose contributions from shorter-lived iodine was not considered. Well, like for every iodine 131, there's 10 times more 132, and 30 times more 133, and 31 times more iodine 129. So these are very powerful emitters, and therefore, why wouldn't you include them? It's completely evil. It's just evil. This is everything they've done tonight that we've read, which is a fraction of the material I went through today, by the way. And so I was, the poll tonight is meant to reflect my contempt of them. As of September 2012, no observable health effects, no deaths due to radiation were reported in any of the workers. None of them. 2 workers died from drowning due to the tsunami, but there was nobody hurt, Dana. Another Fukushima cleanup worker dies, found collapsed after removing radioactive soil. He's not even at the site. He's out in some field. Fukushima worker had a heart attack while working at reactor number 1, which is to be expected in that environment. Radiation around Fukushima nearing levels where humans vomit uncontrollably, and hair can be stripped from the body. So you're getting a lethal dose. And so there was a lot of people died, evacuees, just because they were in a nuclear wasteland, and a lot of them were told to shelter in place and did. They tell you to shelter in place, get the frig out of Dodge, for goodness sakes. 2 high school students in the same school died at once. This is one of my favorite stories. Japanese discuss personal health problems, strange deaths, and also that 7 people died on a single shopping street in 1 year. This is 2012. Do you have a street in your country where 7 people dropped dead on a shopping street in 1 year? Oh, that's a lucky shopping street, Dana. What do you mean? Well, you're lucky you didn't drop dead if you were there. It's like, that's one of the craziest stories imaginable. 7 people died on a single street in 1 year in Fukushima. That's in Fukushima City, right? Which is a nuclear wasteland with 300,000 people in it. The media was reporting that they hear ambulances coming to Fukushima plant at least 10 times a day. But the hospitals won't treat them, right? They're ostracized. because TEPCO owns the major hospital too. Another Fukushima cleanup worker dies, found collapsed after removing radioactive soil. But officially, no observable health effects and nobody died. So the NRC is really like your worst nightmare. Like what they're doing is cruel. That's cruel to treat you like this. That's a cruelty you very rarely see in any other industry, if at all. There's no other industry that is this cruel towards you. Workers have reported stress, depression, worthlessness, helplessness, discrimination, slurs because of anger at TEPCO. Well, like the workers reporting stress, depression, worthlessness, and helplessness are not nuclear scientists, are not nuclear academics, are not nuclear students, are not nuclear corporations or nuclear companies, are they? That's the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and people that I rally strongly for. Anybody been around or even a little bit know how often I rally for these victims, right? The most vulnerable of society, and we're going to treat them like that, as disposable, like paper towels. What a worthless society we are that is able to happen, see? Oh, great. The U.S. Department of Defense. 8,380 personnel afflicted within the Department of Defense were monitored between March 2011 and September 2011, September 31st. 251 people were measured activity levels with a maximum effective dose of 0.4 microsieverts. Like, why would you measure microsieverts at a nuclear meltdown, see? Just bear with me. That's the before and after shitfoot. What a worthless piece of shit. He's the same as the Department of Energy and the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, right? Hang on now. I'm going to play something from Harvard University right after the accident. If I can find it. We know I'll find it, but how long will it take? Because when I'm saying I'm going to go find it, I am going to find it. I don't know how far back up the pile that is, Christ, the big pile of info that I got stacked up. Because I've been at this since Jesus was a baby, it feels like. We must be close to it right now. Remember the broken props? Remember the nights of hell? I won't forget those days anytime soon. I'll play that while I'm looking for... well, how come I can't find that? There's no way it's not in my pile. Everything is in my pile. The problem was my pile gets bigger constantly, right? Hang on, I'm almost there. This is me heading back to Queen Charlotte City in Hawaii, formerly known as Queen Charlotte City, I should say. Oh, I think we're close now. Don't give up on me yet. I thought it was a lot closer than that. I must have skipped past it. Bear with me. Hang on. I'm almost there. My computer is thank goodness I got such a great system, right? Because when you're scanning through all this stuff, a lot of computers will just freeze up. I got no idea where it's to right now. I just didn't expect it to take this long to hunt down. There's no way it should be this far up, but bear with me. Yeah, I got no idea. He was warning about United Nations when he came up with that. I'm going to have to give up because I can't find it. Is that because I started a new session? I have to go import it in. We'll play it tomorrow night or something. You remember the clips from Harvard. I'm going to hit it back down now, so just have one more scan on the way back. Those clips stood right out for us, too. It was impossible to scoot past them. It's just my brain can't register it for some reason, the picture I'm looking for. Okay, let's keep going. I can't keep doing that. Alright, here we go. Back to... That's where we left off right there. Ugh. Off-site doses. The doses received by members of the public have come from 4 different pathways. Submersion dose from airborne radioactivity, inhalation doses from airborne radioactivity, consumption of contaminated water and foodstuff, and direct exposure from contaminated surface disposition. First off, you're getting showers in this stuff, you're cooking your food in this stuff, you're brushing your teeth in this stuff, you're boiling your food in that stuff, you're drinking that stuff, you're doing your dishes, your forks and knives are contaminated. Radiological monitoring of the population was limited. Doses mostly estimated based on fallout. Well, if you fall out, you're breathing it in. If you're breathing it in, then you're bioaccumulating it, sequestering in your muscles, your organs, and your bones. Most residents of Fukushima surrounding areas received whole-body doses less than 10 millisieverts. Let me show you. And so you shouldn't use millisieverts or microsieverts clear the site because you're talking about radioactive fallout. Radioactive fallout shouldn't be described as microsieverts or millisieverts. It's completely, or grays or anything else. It's completely dishonest. You would only do it if you're trying to cover it up, right? And so, let me just show you a Tokyo number so you can kind of wrap your mind around it. Because I got another way to do it, but we haven't got enough time left. Oh, goodness. There we go, I got a folder, that'll help. These two, this is not the ones I'm looking for, but this will do. The fog is at 4,000 atoms per kilogram, never goes away. And at a supermarket was at over 40,000 microsieverts, 40 millisieverts at a supermarket per hour. These are stunning numbers for Tokyo. And we got I gotta find one more. There's one more that tells the story a bit better. Oh, Tokyo. Tokyo was going to relocate their capital, right? Which is Tokyo with 36 million people. They're going to move the government 300 miles west of Tokyo, right? Oh, yeah, we're almost there. I think we'll find it. So 276,000 atoms per kilogram. You multiply it by 66.6 to get a square meter, which is 18 million becquerels. But also, the Canadian embassy in Tokyo was almost 250,000 atoms per square meter. These unbelievable numbers. Residents in Nami and Lydiat are in areas that were not evacuated for extended periods of time post-accident received doses in the ranges of 10 to 50 millisieverts. Again, using millisieverts, microsieverts is completely disproportionate to the reality because it's radioactive fallout. So you're talking physical atoms, and your body attacks every single atom viciously, and every atom in your body is pulsing energy in every direction like an explosion. And so it's killing all these cells and chromosomes and DNA. Your body has to repair in each and every one of them every second. Plus, it has to attack the source. And the source is the atom that's pulsing energy at the speed of light every second. So there's nothing else that we know of that has those particular attributes, right? And when you're bioaccumulating, so think of 50,000 times 750 atoms, which is that's just, you're being generous. It's way worse than that. So let me do the numbers for you. I'll bring it up on the screen. Calculator, and that's what we want. So 50,000, which is 50 millisieverts, which is 50,000 microsieverts. So each microsievert, think of it as 750 physical atoms that are going to sequester in your muscles, your organs, and your bones. And if you're a bird or a mammal or an animal or an insect or a small child, then think about that's going to be mutating your stem cells and your hormones. So in your body, you got 37,500,000 decays a second pulsing. And each one of these pulses are going to wreck chromosomes and DNAs. And you're talking about, so your body spends all of it, is now producing massive amount of white blood cells because you have so many atoms, physical atoms in your body. So your body is saturated with these atoms everywhere. Your body attacks every one of them from every direction with white blood cells for the rest of your life because it can't heal it, which depletes your red blood cells. For every white blood cell you create, you got to displace a red blood cell in your production, right? And what that means now is that you got very little oxygen in your body. You need a certain amount of oxygen just to be functional. So you might have shorter temper, or you might get dizzy all the time, or you might be a little lethargic. But what's going on in the background now is your body's under siege with white blood cells. And so now your immune system is working thousands of times harder than it can. Because you're producing white blood cells at all your joints, all your finger joints are producing white blood cells, not just your spleen. And so you're on a downward slope, and you're more susceptible if you're elderly or a child to pathogens and viruses and flus and stuff like this. It becomes lethal for you. Let's keep going here. We're going to have to give this up pretty quick here. We'll just play a couple of videos from the day because we had some good news today. We got a few things accomplished. It's a great day in the show and stuff like that. And Japanese government's goal is to keep the public exposure below 20 microsieverts per year with a long-term goal of decontamination so that the doses are less than 1 millisievert a year. You can't do that because the reactors are still melting down for starters. And we have a video of a special rapporteur from UN, Bashkuk Tunjab. Let me see if I can find him. I failed on the last hunting expedition. Will we get a repeat? Bashkuk Tunjab. It's been quite a long time since we played his clip, right? Bashkuk Tunjab. I believe that's his name. I'm just saying it so I can visually remember it. And I think that one... by goodness, I think we do got it. Best cook. I'm probably wrong. But yeah, the cover nail was a black, and so it's very hard to find them because I got to fix that, so there's actually a picture. This is a special rapporteur talking about 20 millisieverts a year and people in the nuclear wasteland.
His name is Mr. Bashkuk Tunjak.
Earlier this morning, the mandate issued a press release on the situation in Fukushima, and this is one of the cases that's mentioned in the report. In the press release, we're urging the Japanese authorities to halt the relocation of children and women of reproductive age to areas of Fukushima that exceed levels of radiation that were considered safe before the nuclear disaster. After the nuclear disaster, the government of Japan raised the acceptable level of exposure from 1 millisievert per year to 20 millisieverts per year. And we're quite concerned, in particular for the health and well-being of children who may be raised or born in Fukushima.
So bear with me. Here we go. So we're at the end of the show, basically. Well, like what I'm doing is showing you the documentation, right, to back up all of my assertions. It's not like I'm not like the nuclear industry where I just sit there and lie every day. I'm taking their lies and I'm coming out and showing you documentation to counter their horrific, unbelievable, despicable, cowardly, vicious, hateful attack upon humanity and the 8 million species. The people that work for the nuclear regulatory, what they've done is extraordinary. So I'm going to play these videos from today, then we'll come in and close the poll down. Let's get this up on the big screen. Hi everybody, hope everybody's doing well. Does the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission Fukushima nuclear meltdown cover-up qualify as an evil betrayal and crimes against humanity? I do believe it do, don't it? Okay, so let's play this. We got a bunch of little short clips, and we changed the winch. Changed the winch on the back of the bike, and we fixed some of the equipment. We got welded up, and that's all in the video. We're going to play that right now for you. Here you go. Never ends. Snow, 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 snow. So we're going to take this winch off. I already got these loosened up. I'm going to take that guy off and put the other winch on, which is still in the back seat of the truck. I don't have another way to mount it to the bike. I don't really want to weld it onto one of my hitches right now anyway. Okay, so we got her hooked up. Awesome. Another piece of the pie solved. Okay, so that's a big difference compared to that one. There's a huge difference anyway. Alrighty, that's all welded up. It's all welded up and put back together. And we're ready for the next snow. Right now we got a stupid amount of snow piled up inside. And so, the calm before the storm. So I still got to gouge all of this out. And I'm just going to use that grinder that we bought now to grind down all the wells. it's late in the afternoon, so I'm going to give it up. Giving it up means getting in the house and getting the show ready for the night. There's no end to the day, right? I don't get a chance. If I lose any time at all, then I can't do the proper show. And so it takes a lot of hate to get me here every night. I'm fueled by my hatred for the despicable, scumbag, degenerate nuclear industry. That's pretty cool. No matter how you look at it, that's pretty cool. Hello, everybody. Let's close the poll down. Does the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission's Fukushima nuclear meltdowns cover-up qualify as an evil betrayal and as crimes against humanity? I think we made our case tonight pretty darn good. How do you not call it a betrayal? How do you not call it what it is, right? Because this is an overwhelming amount of information. So even if it's your first show, you learned. There's no way you didn't learn. If you made it through the show, well, your first time, well, good on you. You just woke up. You just woke the fuck up. Congratulations. You're gonna have a few sleepless nights. Don't worry. Come back here. We'll get you up to speed. And take your fear and turn it into hate against the nuclear industry and do the world a favor. Lock up a nuclear scientist and save a species is how I like to say it. Okay, we'll see everybody tomorrow night. Tomorrow night's the big night, the big Thursday show. I'm so burnt out. Really, I'm so burnt out. I don't know if I can do a show tomorrow night. Man, oh man, yeah. Well, anybody who dismisses that is crazy. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Make sure the volume is working. I didn't waste a single moment. Yeah. Desperation nuclear industry again tonight. They're only good at attacking you. They're only good at smearing you. They're only good at lying to you. They're only good at murdering you. They're not good at anything else. Their whole world revolves around killing everything and justifying it by being a scumbag to work for the government. I mean, these are not humans. These are the very, very furthest thing from being a human is what they're doing. They're the most cowardly people you'll ever come across. They're literally cowards. I put my phone number and my name up front and center every single show. I don't hide away from nobody. And I back up every one of my assertions with the documentations. They do the complete opposite. They assassinate you by stabbing you in the back. The most cowardly people imaginable, the most useless people imaginable, that has to be held accountable for their crimes against humanity. What the Nuclear Regulatory Commission done is unequivocally crimes against humanity. And this information wouldn't exist tonight if I didn't dig it up, and that's why they hate me. Because they can't stand to look in the mirror, and I just reminded them how sadistic and evil and worthless they are to society and to their family and friends. They're just a coward society. If you make it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. It costs us very little and it won't go a long way. Have a great night, everybody.